going back slightly in the story, in the late 60s, 1969, we dropped out of university in the north of England and hitchhiked again to London, became a member of a street theatre performance art group called the Exploding Galaxy, and began doing happenings, really, to keep it simple. Lots of improvised characters, and we'd use materials we found in the street, plastic and old chairs and prams, and try and create landscapes and just be as bizarre and absurd as we could possibly be, and get naked and run around yelling. But there was always one thing that never was included in that particular group, which was music. And so eventually, for that reason, we split from them and started something called Coombe Transmissions, which was in the end of 69, early 70. And Coombe Transmissions still did experimental theatre and happenings, but always included music too. But the music was done on the premise that everybody is capable of making music, whether they realize it or not, that we all have a genius factor, and that a musical instrument is just something that makes a noise. Therefore, anything that makes a noise is an instrument, but also anybody who can make it make a noise is a musician. They don't need to know the right way to do it, or the correct, skillful way to do it. In fact, that could even be a hindrance, because they might never discover something really unique that they did by accident because they didn't know the right way. So they will tune it incorrectly, which means they'll get chords no one else will ever get. So our basic approach became that you can't make mistakes. You can only make things that either appeal or don't appeal to certain people. Some people like it, some don't, but that's true of everything. During the 70s, we got more and more interested in the idea of the band as a way to create dialogue with the general public, that art, which was where we were being presented as Coombe, that art was too elitist, it was too precious, and we didn't want to be precious, and we didn't want to be elitist. We wanted to be on the street and causing trouble and having a good time and making mischief. We wanted making trouble. We wanted trouble out there. So it was very parallel to the punk time. And it was the same atmosphere, you know, like this country sucks and the Conservative Party suck and the whole place is falling apart, and it's hypocrisy right behind all of this. You know, let's get out there and scream hypocrisy. How could we do it? We can't play, but we can make a band anyway. What would that band be like? Okay, what's lying around? And we looked around our studio space, our art studio space, and somebody had left a broken bass guitar, so we put some humbucker, pickups in it, and we didn't know they were meant for a lead guitar. We just stuck them in because they were the nearest thing we could find when we went in a shop. Oops! They were the nearest thing we could find when we went in this shop. So somebody else had left some strange percussion instruments. We still had a drum kit that was there. Chris Carter turned up, who made his own homemade synthesizers from Home Electrician or some magazine. He would build all these modules with little soldering iron, and he had this massive old modular synthesizer that he'd built. Sleazy was involved, Peter Christopherson, he'd become involved. We were all in Coombe together, but Sleazy was really into William Burroughs. So he basically, Walkmans had only just come out, those little tape recorders, they were brand new technology. He got 6 of them, and then somehow he took them apart and reworked them so that he fed them into this keyboard that he got, and basically each cassette tape in each Walkman, he could now play both sides of the stereo at the same time. Basically, Sleazy invented the first sampler. There were no samplers in 1975. But with this, he could record anything he wanted on these cassette tapes. And then when he pressed the different keys, he would get both sides of the stereo of each side of each cassette. So each cassette gave him 4 sound sources, 90 minutes long. And each 90 minutes could be anything that he recorded anywhere. And as he hit each key, he would get each sound. I mean, infinite choice again, immediately. But also he built it into a sequencer too. So he could press them down and it would remember which ones he pressed and turn it into a rhythm. One example of that is Five Knuckle Shuffle, a TG Throbbing Gristle song, where the rhythm is just his cassette tapes going through a sequencer that he built. So that was a really good example of taking contemporary technology and then bastardizing it and rebuilding it to make it do something completely different to its official specifications. Something really remarkable. And he would go out and he would record initially people in the street talking. He had lots of different microphones. He had the ones that spies use for espionage. He would sit across the street, say from a brothel, and record things that were happening inside the brothel in Soho. He also bugged a mercenary office where they would hire people to go to Africa as mercenaries and would record all the conversations about what they might or might not be prepared to do when they got there. All kinds of incredible stuff. And all of that would be fed in to our music. So he was using the cut-up tapes in a really new, completely new way. Cozy, it was a joke originally. We said, most bands at that time, most bands don't have a girl lead guitarist, so you're going to be on the lead guitar. And she said, oh, do I have to? Yes, it'll look good. And no one does that. So she said, well, all right, but I don't really like guitars. So we went to Woolworths and bought her a cheap £15 satellite guitar and brought it back. She sat with it and she goes, it's heavy. So Chris said, give it to me. And he got a big jigsaw. He just went zoom, zoom, and sawed off all the excess wood and gave it back to her and said, is that light enough? And that's how she ended up with this guitar that looks like a stick.